In chapter 4 of your textbook, you will learn about writing tasks. And this is a really important chapter um, that I think would be very helpful as you prepare your literature review and methods section this semester, which, as you know, account for a major portion of your grade. So make sure to read this chapter carefully. Don't dismiss it as something that you're not going to need because it'll provide you with assistance in completing these projects. I often find that students have difficulty with identifying articles that are appropriate given the assignment requirements. And so I wanted to make this video to talk about the different types of articles that you're likely to encounter in your searches, in your library searches. I'm not going to go over how to find an article at the library. You can view some of the resources put out by the librarians, which will be more helpful for you to find articles. But instead, I want to talk about the different types of articles that you might come across. So the first one is a research paper. This is a primary source in which the authors of the article conducted some sort of original study. They have raw data that they analyzed, and they're reporting those data to you. And so, um, oftentimes, research papers have very specific sections. That's one of the things that will clue you that it's a research paper. So, you'll see an abstract, an introduction that describes the rationale for the study, a methods section, which describes what the authors did and how they conducted the study, the results section, which summarizes the results, and then a discussion which talks about the results, the limitations, and the implications of their findings. There are several different types of research papers or procedures that may be used in a research paper. So you might come across qualitative research or experimental research where you're trying to identify more of a causal relationship. You might come across correlational studies where the researchers were evaluating whether or not two variables covary with one another. So, studies that are looking for relationships between variables. For this class, I'd like you to focus on choosing experimental studies, and specifically experimental studies that utilize single case research design methodology. I'll talk about choosing articles in a little while toward the end of this video. So we've talked about research papers. The other types of papers that you're likely to come across are review articles. These are secondary sources where the authors did not conduct any original studies or what they did instead was they summarized the findings of several other researchers. And so these are really useful when you're trying to understand a topic or trying to just find information or probe to see what's available. I also find review articles to be exceptionally valuable in my clinical practice. So, say that I have a referral concern and I want to see what has been done um, to address this referral concern, then I will look for a review article that summarizes a lot of the research. And so it can save me a little bit of time. But the problem with this is you're relying on the interpretation of the other authors to correctly interpret the primary source of research. The other type of study that you might come across is a meta-analysis. So a meta-analysis is similar to a review article in some respects because you're looking at the existing research and what's been done. But in a meta-analysis, there's a statistical analysis that's combining the results of many different research articles. So, for example, I just conducted a meta analysis looking at procedures to train teachers to use praise. And so, we dug up all of the articles that looked at teacher training and specifically training teachers to use praise. And then we utilized statistical procedures in order to evaluate the most commonly used used training procedures and then the most effective training procedures. So there's other articles that you might come across, but those are the main ones that I see. And for this class, I want you to focus your articles on selecting research papers. And as you're selecting articles for your project, you want to focus on current research. So I try to find articles that are published within the past 3 to 5 years. This helps me to identify what's been done and what advances have already been made. When you're conducting a research study, you don't want to reinvent the wheel. You want to evaluate a novel application of what you're trying to evaluate or the question you're trying to answer. There is a caveat to that. Sometimes there's a really important article that might have been published, you know, up to several decades ago, and you can still include those articles if you're trying to build a foundation for the importance of your research. The one that I always find myself citing, I do a lot of research with treatment integrity, is I cite Frank Gresham's study about treatment integrity from 1989 and 1990. So even though it's a dated study, it's still very relevant to the types of research questions that I'm evaluating. When you're selecting articles for this class, I would like you to focus on peer-reviewed journals. Peer-reviewed articles are a gold standard for publication, and basically it means that every article published in a peer-reviewed journal went through a rigorous review of peers who have expertise in the field and went through your study and talked about the limitations and the methods and provided suggestions for revisions. And then it goes to the editor who makes a final decision about whether or not to include the article for publication. And so that's different from an open access journal where I can sign up to get my article published. That's not good practice. That's not what we want. We want to use peer-reviewed journals, especially when we're making decisions about interventions to use with our clients. Another requirement for this course is that I want you to focus on articles that utilize single case research design as opposed to group design or qualitative research. And so the types of terms that you're going to be looking for, and you'll learn a lot more about as we progress through the semester, might be withdrawal designs or reversal, alternating treatment designs, multi-element designs, simultaneous treatment designs, multiple baseline designs, multiple probe designs, changing criterion designs would be one that you can look for. And so I want you to focus on selecting those articles that use single case research design methodology and those that are able to demonstrate a functional relationship. So where do you find those articles? There are certain journals that are more likely to publish studies that use single case research design. Some of the ones that you may or may not be familiar with are JABA, so the Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis, Behavior Analysis and Practice, Verbal Behavior, the Journal of Behavioral Education. Those I find commonly present single case research design. There are also some journals that will have a mix of single case research design and group design methodology. So journals like Research in Developmental Disabilities, the Journal of Autism and Developmental Disorders, Psychology in the Schools. I find that they have a healthy mix, but you might be able to find single case research designs in those sorts of journals. And then there are some journals where you're just unlikely to find anything that uses single case research design methodology just because of the preference or the readership. But I'd like you to focus on some of those journal sources. For the ones that are published through ABAI, such as Behavior Analysis and Practice and JABA, you can often find the archives of those for no cost online. And then use our library. If the library doesn't have an article, you don't need to purchase it. We have a service called Interlibrary Loan where you can often get copies or reprints of different articles if it's not a journal that the Ball State Library subscribes to.